You shouldn't marry if you're from different faiths because you won't last, and one of you is going to burn forever.
Wow.
This is this is stuff that therapists have said. Is this good advice? Let's explore. Mended Light. Okay, so conventional wisdom is that you want to be compatible with the person that you get together with. You shouldn't marry somebody who is of a different faith than you. That your marriage isn't going to last. That your relationship will only last if you have the same faith tradition. Is this true? Thoughts, first of all. Preliminary thoughts before I tell you what the research says.
Well, compatibility is definitely important, but I think there's also the flip side, assuming like, oh, maybe we do have the same religion, that therefore we're compatible.
Yeah.
And so I think compatibility goes a lot further than just religion.
You're so wise.
Whoa.
If you were single, I'd marry you all over again.
Because we're compatible.
Yes, well, we're getting there. Compatibility isn't about sameness. It's about how well do you go together.
Right.
Right? And so when it comes to faith, statistically speaking, people with the same faith or a shared faith are more likely to stay together than people who practice different faiths and they get together. But what are some of the criteria of this? One, how devout and intense are you about your faith? Because like a lapsed Catholic and a cultural Jew, right, could get along, it could be just fine together because neither of them are really super devout and this is their life and this is everything. Whereas two people might share a faith, but practice that faith completely differently. They may be part of the same church and approach it from a different vantage point. We do see what matters more, though, than just do we have the same faith, do we go to the same church, is do we respect one another? Statistically speaking, people who are devout in their particular faith do want to marry somebody who is also devout in that specific faith because there's a lot of foreseeable conflict of what church are we going to raise our kids in? Do we have the same beliefs, the same values? Do we want the same things? Are we concerned about each other's eternal salvation? Like these sorts of things. But compatibility doesn't necessarily mean sameness because you can be part of the same church and not be compatible. And I'm not just talking personality. You can not be compatible spiritually. How you approach your faith culture, your faith tradition, the doctrines, the practices, there's variations within faiths. And there are people who go to different churches, or one person is religious and the other person isn't at all, and they have happy, thriving relationships.
Right.
Because compatibility isn't necessarily sameness, it's how well do you go together. I know a woman who's a devout Mormon, and her husband is a devout Jew, and they both believe wholeheartedly in their religions, and they're wonderful together. And their kids get both Christmas and Hanukkah, so that's awesome.
That's a win.
Yeah, the way that they make it work is we're going to raise our kids to know about both.
Yeah.
And
There's mutual respect. There's mutual understanding.
I don't need you to become Mormon. I don't need you to become a Jew. Like, I'm going to respect this matters to you. And so the shared spiritual value where they're the same is that shared respect. Is that shared, I'm going to honor what matters so much to you. And I'm not going to try and pull you away from it. And then instead of fighting about, well, are our kids going to go to this church or that church? The kids get a little bit of all of it. And there's the understanding that when the kids grow up, they're also going to choose their own path and what that looks like for them. The fact is, whatever therapist said this, that your relationship is doomed to fail if you don't practice the same faith, that's not true. And this is what happens when we hear about a trend and we take a trend, a broad general trend, and make it into a universal rule. There are very few universal rules in relationships. There are some. But you can absolutely make this work. But it comes down to what that spiritual compatibility looks like.
Well, and I think it's important to also realize in our culture nowadays, there's a lot of people going through faith transitions.
Yeah.
And so a partnership or a couple might have gotten together, gotten married, and been on the same page spiritual wise. And then one or both might have gone through a faith transition where they ended up in a very different place.
Yeah.
And when that happens, sometimes one of the partners, maybe that didn't change, feels betrayed, right?
Yeah.
Because there was a certain expectation. There was a certain expectation that we were going to believe the same things. We were going to teach our kids the same things. This was our
Have
eternal
the same
spiritual
traditions. Yeah,
perspective.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And then one partner isn't there anymore, and then the other partner can be
It's not a
betrayed,
betrayal.
and but they can feel betrayed.
Yeah.
And what do you do with that?
Well, I think it's important to recognize first and foremost that it's not a betrayal. Like faith transitions happen, spiritual journeys happen as we look within and we ask ourselves what we truly believe, what truly matters to us, what feels real and true to us. And that's not always going to sync up with everybody, including, I mean, we talked about this in another video. Part of being in a marriage relationship is do you still choose this person for who they are today versus who they were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, because we evolve. And do we evolve together or do we diverge? And I would say it's important to be honest with yourself. It's important to recognize, okay, what do I want out of life and out of a partner? I know people where one partner undergoes a faith transition and the other doesn't, and they make it work because there's this, hey, I'm going to honor your journey, and I don't need my partner to be an anchor or a rock or to share this with me. For other people,
Or to affirm my choices.
But other people very much do. This is what I've always wanted. I've wanted to be with somebody who shared this belief. This is essential to who I am. And it's important to recognize that both of those are valid. So if you and your partner can get in sync and get on the same page, that's great. If you can't, it doesn't mean either one of you has failed. Sometimes it just means, hey, this is as far as we're going to go together. Mm-hmm. And it's sad. But it doesn't mean one of us betrayed the other. It doesn't mean that one of us did wrong by the other. It just means that we've evolved differently and we're no longer a fit for each other's lives. And giving each other room to grow, giving each other room to follow that path, whether you're following your spiritual path together in this partnership or now separate, you can have genuine love and care for one another, and that can take different shapes and forms.
And presumably the reason this is such a hard conversation is because of the children.
Yeah.
Right? The children that are from the partnership or the marriage. And so how do you have those conversations with your children, whether it's you got married and you're not of the same faith, and so you're actively practicing two different viewpoints on that, or one of the parents went through a faith transition. How do you have those conversations with the children?
I think it always comes down to honesty and candor and compassion and respect. And when I say compassion, there doesn't need to be a bad guy in the story. Mm-hmm. There doesn't need to be a villain. Saying, that your parents are not on the same page anymore when it comes to their beliefs. We love you, and when you are old enough, you're going to find your own way. We're each going to teach you what we believe, and we're each going to raise you the best that we can. Like that's the way to have that conversation. If we're staying together, so here's what the home looks like, Dad's going to be going to church, Mom's not, and I would like for you to come with me until you're old enough to make the decision for yourself whether or not you want to. Mom's got some ideas and Dad's got some ideas, and they're not exactly the same. We're going to expose you to both, and you're going to figure out what feels right and true to you. Or, hey, our family is always going to be a family, but it's going to take a different shape now, right? We're not all going to be living in the same roof at the same time, and so we have to figure out how to still be a loving family in this form and in this version.
I think those are the type of life conversations we want to be having with our children regardless. You just end up having them a little bit sooner when there is that difference in the home. Yeah. Because I know we have conversations with our children because they'll say, oh, well, does that person go to our church, And that's never been something that has been a sticking point for us or even something we've pointed out. But culturally, it's something that they have become aware of. And we've had plenty of conversations with them of, no, they don't go to our church, but they're a good person and we respect them and we value them. Yeah. And so I think it's just an opportunity to have those types of conversations that much sooner with your children. Yeah, and instead of it's the people that we know and love outside of the home, it's the people that we know and love inside of the home. Yeah. That we can love people and connect with them and have a life with them even if we don't see eye to eye on everything. It's actually a very healthy, beautiful thing. And there's, like you like to say, it's always a growth opportunity. Everything's a growth opportunity. Everything. And so that could be a growth opportunity for you as a family and as individuals. So this is
Stuff that therapists say.
They say stuff.
They say stuff, and it's not always good stuff. So in this segment, if you're just joining us for this, we break down things that therapists have said that's just bad advice, right? That we get from our fans. One such piece of advice was you just need to get past it.
Just get over it.
Just get over it.
Just stop it.
I love this. This is such great advice. Just knock it off. What would we say to the crap that therapist said? Check out this video. Here it is. There's that video. It's the best. You're going to love it.